show about how, in particular, over the last 4 games, he's really stepped out of that role and has really kind of impressed in high pick and roll, like high ball screens. I think that's what they're going to do tonight against Marquette because Terrace is bigger than anybody that Marquette has, and again, like he's a load. He's 6'10", he's a full 6'10", a full 260, 270 pounds. He's a monster. And so when he plays with that ferocity, with that downhill mentality, think about it. You're a football guy. He reminds me of. I'm a Giants guy, unfortunately, but the Giants of old. I'm not even talking about old. I'm saying the last championship when Brandon Jacobs, 6'4", 264 pounds, got downhill. He was as ferocious of a runner as there was in the game, and it's a similar thing with Terrace. Like, as long as he does it with the ferocity that is controlled, where he doesn't like Joe said, he doesn't get into foul trouble early, they're in really good shape because what it does is it makes the defense collapse, and then you get open looks. For three, and that happened in the last game against Providence. They doubled him. He kicked it right back out to Liam for a three. So even if the game plan is to not double Terrace and cover the 3-point line, sometimes innately as a basketball player, you help anyway. So that's why it's important that he plays at that high level for UConn.
Steve, what are you, Marcel?
Yeah, I can't hear him.
Steve, what are you doing, dude? Oh, Lord have mercy. Joe.
Yes, you.
Joe, I got to tell you, I love you. You're the best, dude. You're the best. I want to say something, deviate on something real quick. So, I was watching, Auburn, Kentucky play, and Auburn, Auburn, looks to be really, really incredible. As far as and the SEC obviously has a lot of pretty good teams in it. If you were to say right now, like who are the like 2 or 3 hot teams that are challenging Auburn, Joe, right now, as far as who's rolling, is St. John's in the mix with that for where they are? Are they really still outside of that group?
I don't think they are. I don't think anybody in the Big East is. I think if you get a Big East team in the Sweet, if you get 1 or 2 Big East teams in the Sweet 16, I'll be surprised.
Wow.
St. John's has had a great year, but they're flawed. I think Duke is the other powerhouse in the country with all their kids and stuff. But again, that's a coach who hasn't had any sort of postseason success. So you have to question what they're going to do when they get – I mean, obviously they're going to win their first game, and they're probably going to win their second 8-9 game. I think Alabama is a pretty good team. Houston's a team that always seems to want to contend and can never get across the finish line. I think I don't know what you guys think, but I just think the number of teams that can win the national championship this year is probably 4 or 5.
So there's not one clear cut. You think there's really?
Well, I think Auburn and Duke are clearly ahead of the pack.
But there's really 4 teams that could come out.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be a shock because there's so much talent, especially in the SEC. That's what blows me away is the SEC being a basketball powerhouse.
Yeah, well, I mean, Alabama returns players. The transfer portal is interesting because I thought that they came out with a lot of the rankings of what the different transfer portals were and did it translate into as much success. And Houston wasn't like in the top 100, and they're obviously one of the top teams. So it's interesting on how you spend the money. It's still not like a science from that standpoint as far as with respect to getting your team to perform. Obviously, St. John's has had a lot of success with it. Obviously Duke, obviously Auburn, obviously Alabama. But I don't think some of their classes were, top 10 classes. It's interesting that the SEC, I think you're right, has so many teams that are in the mix. And I do think that may be an overall financial aspect as far as investment, not just NIL, but investment in resource. Even though we have obviously phenomenal resources. I mean, we have phenomenal, but they were behind for many years in basketball from that standpoint, and have had the ability to catch up a lot more because of the financial resources with respect to NIL and coming from football and all those kind of things, which I think is interesting and has translated into better players wanting to go there and better coaches wanting to go there. I think that's interesting where, if you go back to when the 2000s, early 2000s, I mean, the impetus behind the Big East coming back was really that the Northeast was really kind of the predominant basketball power along with the ACC. And that part has shifted a lot because of football, and because of NIL. It's given the ability to have that shift. I think that's really an interesting twist. And there are outlier teams, obviously. There's no doubt about it. But I think it's an interesting shift because the longevity of success of the Big East, they're already talking about these merger things and they wanted the ACC to. I don't think that'll happen. I don't know why the ACC would do it, but other than if they feel like the ACC is going to disappear because of football. Florida State and Clemson
they won the loss. They settled their lawsuit, so they're going to be out, right? Yeah.
Right, so that's exactly it. So, huge. Are they doing it to preserve? And that could be an opportunity potentially for UConn.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's just the health of the ACC. What happens with the ACC eventually is interesting. But it's interesting to see how that shifted because bringing the Big East back was really, hey, these places have been powers in basketball, and we'll be able to stand on our own 2 feet in basketball without having to worry about it being affected by football. But obviously, it is.
Yeah, it's totally affected by football. The one thing I would go back on, with all due respect to Joe, is like I think Duke is up there with Auburn. Like if we're going back to that initial topic and kind of playing off of that, I think Auburn's ahead of them. I know they just lost to Texas A&M, who's playing phenomenal too. Missouri's playing really well in the SEC. You got a couple of teams that are outside of that top, 1 or 2 or 3 teams that you're hearing about with the Auburns, the Tennessees, the Floridas, the Alabamas. Those 2 teams could make a run to the Final Four easily. The only reason why I question Duke is, man, they have 3 lottery picks. They have all the shooting in the world. They have all the height in the world. They look like an NBA G League team. Like everyone's 6'6", 6'7", and all the way up to 7'2". They're going to be bigger than anybody they play, including Auburn. And my only question is, are they as good as they are because the ACC is really down, or are they as good as they are because they're that good? And I think it's a mixture of both. I think it reminds me kind of, and this is a terrible example, but it comes to mind, when St. Joe's went undefeated, or even Wichita State went undefeated and then lost to Kentucky in the second round, a really talented team that was an 8-9 team. Duke has obviously a much richer history in basketball than those 2 teams, but at the same time, you're playing, Miami and Florida State and in Boston College and, beating them by 30, 40 points. They did beat Illinois by 35 points, a Big Ten team that's an NCAA tournament team. I'm just not as moved by what the ACC does because of how bad it is this year. And this is another crazy stat. I said this on my show the other day. Duke plays Louisville next, last game of the season. They have the best Ken Pom rating in the history of the sport at this point.
What's that mean?
They could be the greatest team ever in that world, in that analytics world. But if they lose to Louisville, they'll actually be the 3 seed in the ACC, which is the wildest thing I've ever heard. Like they've only lost 1 game in the ACC. They lost to Clemson on the road. So if they lose to Louisville, I think it's not either. I think it's at home.
Wow,
likely not going to happen.
Who's that?
If they do lose, What's that?
Yeah, he said if Duke loses.
If Duke
Yeah,
loses,
Duke's
they'll be
last
the
game
3
is
seed in
North
the
Carolina.
Hey,
Say
Maria.
again?
Duke's last game is North Carolina.
Yeah, if they tie, if I guess the point is if they tie for the league title, for whatever coin flip or whatever, they'd be a 3 seed in the ACC tournament, which is so weird because they've been
Well, I
so
understand,
dominant
but
all
you
year.
were saying if they lose to Louisville, they're not playing Louisville.
Pardon me, that was a mistake. But that
Oh,
was
UNC.
that was my
Okay. What's crazy is up here, because I'm in Syracuse country, is nobody can believe how bad they are. They like fell off the face of the earth, and it's been 2 or 3 years. That was the one thing Syracuse had, and now they're just a dumpster fire. And I don't know if it's Adrian Autry's fault or they're just not raising enough money, but that's shocking. I never thought Syracuse would be as bad as they have been.
I think they have money because if you've seen what football has been able to do and what their head coach has done, there's still an art to recruiting. There's still an art to getting the pieces into the puzzle, and I think they obviously that coach struggled there with that. So do they have? Look, some of these schools do not have the same coffers, but in basketball, you don't need as many guys. So that's the biggest thing is it's how you, and that's what I noticed with the rankings of what the rankings were in the transfers, and then where the teams were actually ranked during the season. That I noticed is it's not just about how much you spend, but it's spending wisely. I think is and I guess because in football, you have a lot more players you have to have. So if you have a much bigger coffer and you can spend on 30 guys versus spending on 10, you are definitely going to win over the team that only can spend on 10. Whereas basketball, there's 5 people on the court. So if you can spend more wisely, and yes, you have to spend for one guy, but if you spend wisely with a couple of the other players, you could be just as good, if not better. Houston's proved that to an extent, because they've spent nowhere near the money that other people have.
Do you think they have like a pay structure?
Yeah. But I'm saying they haven't spent, they haven't had to go out. They're putting the pieces together. That's an important thing. Being able to put the pieces together. Obviously, you have to have a star or two, but putting the pieces together from an NIL standpoint is an important thing.
Yeah, the roster construction matters, and you can't miss. That's the one thing. That's plagued. That's played UConn this year. They hit on Terrace, and you're starting to see returns on that, but they've missed on Aiden. So, if you go 50% all the time, which hasn't been the case for Dan and his staff, then that's not a great percentage. But if that happens, I'm sure that's happened to Syracuse. If you look at all these teams that are not doing what they're supposed to, what their history shows, it's likely because they either didn't hit on a transfer, or they didn't hit on some freshman that they put a lot of stock in. And that unfortunately is part of the game right now. And so you're not going to be 100% all the time. And when you do hit, you have to take advantage of it.
Do you think they have a pay structure where they know exactly what they're going to spend and who they're going to spend it on based off of what they have coming in? Or is it just they just throw against the wall whatever they have?
I think it depends on you mean UConn? Are you talking about UConn, or are you talking about other places?
I think everyone.
I think everybody has
a pay structure.
Everybody knows what the certain amount of money that's coming in.
Yeah.
They know what they have the ability to spend on. It's what do they want to spend it on. I'm sure there are places that have just like anywhere else. There's some places that have a better system of how they're doing it than others. We're not privy to all that information, but there's no doubt that you're going through and you say, hey, we got X amount to spend, and do we want to spend it here, or here? I mean, that's it. There's no doubt. Now, the teams in the long run with a better play, it seems like Auburn's coach has a really good idea of how he wants to do these things. He was experienced with spending money before you were allowed to spend money. Bruce Pearl. Yeah. So he was a veteran of the game there way before. Way before you were actually allowed to do that, So
yeah, there's a few.
A lot of these programs Football does it especially, but they have a position on staff called general manager.
Yep.
And that's the person who keeps track of the finances and works with the coach. But nothing happens without the head coach saying it's going to happen.
He has final saying approval.
Joe, do you think, because I wondered if UConn was going to, do you think Tom Moore handles that mostly for the men?
He does.
Yep. Hey, listen, everybody, I'm quick. That was a quick pop in. I got a jet. I'm going to go have lunch with my uncle. I appreciate you guys. I'll be up there tonight. I don't know if Joe, if I'll see you. Maria, good to see you. Thanks for having me on, guys.
All right.
Take care, Mark.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't you say a word.
Of me?
Don't you say a word. You're giving me the look. You're giving me the side eye.
We have a lady on the stage, so I won't say anything.
Thank you.
Out of respect for the lady that we have here.
Thank you. I appreciate
she brings some grace and presence to our podcast.
And a lot of cachet, I know.
Now, what did I miss?
Oh, nothing.
Not a goddamn thing.
We just had a special guest. We had a special guest. That's all. We had a special guest, and it was Steve's fault. So I'm just on fire right now.
Remember that we're all in control of our own futures in life.
You know what, Dave? Thank you. You just make me feel so much better.
Well, I'm giving you motivation. You
are. But I was looking at that. Do you think he is going to change up the starting lineup? Even though he's starting Johnson and he's barely playing, Reed always is coming off the bench and he's playing 30 minutes. Why wouldn't he switch it?
He's only played 30 minutes the last few games.
Right.
It's not like this was. I mean, they were pretty much splitting the minutes all year, and Maria would be awesome because from a coach's perspective. But sometimes it helps when you bring a guy off the bench and he can give you a jolt. Kind of adds to the momentum, gets the crowd into the game more. If he doesn't start Reed, he'll be in as soon as Johnson gets one foul. Never mind two.
Listen, as a coach or as an athlete, right? It's not who starts the game, it's who finishes it.
Right.
So,
that's
I think
the great Red Auerbach line.
Yeah, I mean, some guys are just better being able to observe for a couple of minutes before they come in. So I think that's one component you got. Secondly, I think to Joe's point, like if your 5 most high energy guys or your 5 guys that you only have that are high energy are all starting, then you bring someone in off the bench and you got an automatic lull. That's also not a great situation. So I think it's almost like when he comes in, it's like an upgrade of energy and physicality, which I think is crucial, whether that's 2 minutes into the game or 5 minutes into the game. I don't think games are decided in the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, right? They're decided in the last 5 minutes of most games. So
absolutely.
Again, I don't put any stock into who starts versus who doesn't. I tell my daughter that all the time. I'm like, who cares who starts? If you play more minutes, the heck does it matter? You got to contribute no matter what.
Well, because you were talking about St. John's. I didn't see St. John's play a lot of guys. Like they didn't go very deep when they played us. Do they just not have depth, or is that just what Patino does? He just rides his guys.
They played 8 guys. You don't need more than 8.
Well, I mean, like nobody off the bench played more than like 10 minutes.
For who?
St. John's when we played them.
I'm going to call a fact check on that one.
It was. They had one guy. One guy played 19 minutes, but other than that, it was just spot duty. Because that was the one thing I was surprised at, because I thought they would go deeper. Because he typically plays a lot of guys. From what I remembered, because I watched the whole game and I was very surprised that they did not go deep, but they were just. I mean, God, they looked so impressive. That's why
they're not built to go deep into the NCAA tournament, in my opinion.
Not yet. You don't play more than 8 kids in the NCAA tournament typically.
Right. Exactly.
So, I mean, I think St. John's, the way that I look at their rotation is if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So if that's your rotation, the only time you're going to go deeper than 8 is if you got foul trouble or you got an injury or something like that. Because if you're playing 9 guys, that means 4 of your starters are out of the game potentially, right? So, yeah, I think 8. You got to have a nice 8-person rotation when you hit the tournament.
The only spot where not playing a lot of guys can come into an issue is like a conference tournament where you might have to play 3 games in a day, 3 games in a row.
Oh, right.
3 games in. But we've seen Syracuse did it. We did it in 2011. You can do it with a minimum rotation because let's be honest, it's not people our age who are out there trying to run around. It's guys who are 18 to 22 years old. You know, this whole thing of, we don't want to tire them out. Well, you know what? That's too bad. I mean, they let them run, let them play, because after the final game of the conference tournament, you've got 4 days to get ready for the NCAAs.
Right, you jump right into it.
And St. John's plays with 4 guards, so I mean they're using.
They were just
they
up and
use
down.
4 guards. I'm curious in the NCAAs how. I mean, one thing Patino's always been is working with the team that he has. You know, when he was back in Kentucky and they were on probation, and he was the first guy to just basically chuck up threes, you know, and win games that way. And so he's always adapted to what his kind of situation is, which I think is what makes him a great basketball coach. So going with the 4 guys, I'm just curious. Obviously, they're built that system will work well, I think, in the Big East tournament. But I'm curious when they face against bigger teams that have athletic, bigger guys, a little bit quicker, bigger guys, whereas the Big East does not have as many of those type of players as some of these other teams down in the SEC or some other schools. But yeah, I mean, like because we're like a bad matchup against St. John's with the 4-guard lineup. Like they're whizzing around us, you know.
Yeah, they were up and down.
We're bigger and they're smaller and quicker, and they're just, you know, whizzing around and stealing the ball and blowing by us, you know. So it's like a but I don't know if that would be the case when you get deep into the run in the NCAAs with teams they might be bigger and as athletic.
Maria, the women's tournament is this weekend, right? They play Saturday or Sunday, is it?
Their first game will be Saturday.
Okay, and they should have a cakewalk through this. There's no one other than like Creighton that can challenge them, right?
Creighton can't challenge them.
I don't think so either.
I mean, honestly, I think the best game of the weekend is probably going to be the Marquette Villanova game. That'll probably be the closest, most exciting game of the weekend, I would say. My assumption is that they'll see Creighton on Monday night. My assumption is that they'll beat Creighton by 30 points again. You know, unless Creighton comes out and hits, 23s. And even then, I don't think they can keep up. What I've been most impressed with, and Joe, maybe you can speak to this as well, because there are some years over the last 20 years where I didn't follow it as closely because, you're doing stuff and whatever. I got to tell you, this full court press that we're doing, specifically when KK Arnold comes in the game, the pressure that we're putting on people now, garbage in, garbage out. It's still the Big East. Are we going to be able to pressure some of these better teams? I'm not sure. But I think from a full court and a half court defensive schematic right now, I really love where we're at. I think what you're seeing is that we're pressuring the guards early and often in the offense. It's taking teams, almost 10 seconds to get the ball over half court. And then, once they get into that set, I think we're like swallowing people whole right now.
I agree. I totally agree, Maria. I think the brilliance in what Gino and the staff have done in molding this team into a team that's playing, to be honest with you, right now as well as anybody. in the country.
And not only that, we're adding people, and everybody else is shortening their rosters, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Now, UConn
again,
women, I could see going like 9 deep in the tournament, right?
Right.
Easily.
Right. I totally agree. What they've done to reshape this team is nothing short of a stroke of genius, and I think they can. I think they can compete with. I don't think there's any super teams in women's basketball. We certainly see Notre Dame's not. We know UCLA and USC aren't. We don't think South Carolina is. So why can't UConn get number 12? I'm much more bullish on the women's chances than I am on the men. I don't think there's any way the men can win the national championship.
I 100% agree. I think also what he's done, which is really, really smart, is, they're not really big in the post, right? So it's not a strength of ours defensively, but I think that what he's done with the guard pressure on the outside is the pressure is so strong, you can hide those other weaknesses because these kids can't even pass it into the post because of the pressure on the perimeter.
Right.
So it's keeping the ball out of the paint really, really well. And I think that, and I think too, like, he probably knew this all season that he could play like this, but until some of these kids started to come back and get healthy, you don't want to, press people 90 feet with the same 6 or 7 kids and totally gas them before you get to the tournament. I think what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is him kind of put the foot down, his foot down on the gas pedal and say, all right, I'm going to let the horses out and just pressure people full court, and we'll get people some subs when they need it because he has the bench a little bit more healthy now. So I agree. I think we're definitely a Final Four team. Now, could we have a hiccup along the way, maybe in an Elite 8 game, potentially, depending on where the seeding is? But I like that we're speeding other teams up right now. And I love us from a defensive perspective. I honestly, right now, I think we're the best defensive team in the country.
Well, I think getting Aubrey Griffin back has been a big key.
Huge.
Because what she brings defensively is something that most other teams don't have.
Yeah. And by the way, she's pretty rested, right? Like, she's been hurt.
Very rested. Yeah.
Yeah. But, she's probably hitting the bike and whatever else. But, like, this kid's got pretty much fresh legs right now, pushing into the Big East tournament in NCAAs. That's a huge benefit because of some of the freshmen that you're playing in the post, or
I went to the Creighton game, and where the media sits at the XL Center, we're kind of near the end of the bench. And when she wasn't playing, Aubrey was on the bike the whole time.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh wow.
I just think where they are now is in a really good place. I think when you get to the tournament, once you get past the first weekend, which is basically the UConn Invitational, once you get past the first weekend, then you gotta hope that Sarah doesn't get in foul trouble, because if she gets in foul trouble in a game, then they're gonna have real problems. But because of that lack of inside scoring, you can't count on Jana El-Alfi. Brady's still hurt. Who knows if she's gonna come back?
Well, she played the other night. I actually thought she looked good the other night.
Okay.
Against Marquette. I thought she looked good when she came back in. She made some nice moves around the rim. She actually hit a 3.
Well, then she can help. Then she can help you if she's.
Well, listen, you just need her to give you like 2 minutes a quarter right now, right?
Yeah, that's all.
That's it. All. And then you got Aubrey for another 4 minutes a quarter if somebody needs a sub. I think the big thing about getting Aubrey back is that it releases the pressure of Sarah definitely having to play the 5 when El-Alfi goes out of the game, because I do think that Aubrey can play that a little bit because of her athleticism.
Against some teams, though, she's not. Against the team like the UCLA team with the big girl at center, that would be hard for Aubrey to play.
Well, I think that's going to be hard for Sarah too.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of it's a wash there. I think El-Alfi will have to play more. I think Ice Brady will have to go in and bang a little bit if they see UCLA. But you can also, when Aubrey's in, if El-Alfi's in, now you throw Sarah on the wing.
Yeah.
That's a major game changer, putting her at the 3. Like, who in the country has a 3 guard that can guard that kid? The answer is nobody.
Yeah, she's special. She really is. But you had said when I asked you yesterday, even if they roll through the Big East tournament, you aren't certain that they would get a 1 seed. You still think they're a 2?
It's like I said, I think we got to see how it plays out with some of these tournament games and the other conferences, because everybody looks at the AP top 25. Just because UConn's number 3 in the AP top 25 right now doesn't mean they automatically get a number 1 seed. They got the NCAA committee will look at RPI. They're going to look at wins against top 25 teams, and because we haven't played a bunch of those, and we have lost a couple of them, right? We lost to Notre Dame, lost to USC. I could see us squeezing in that 4th number 1 spot, or I could see us getting that top number 2 seed.
Well, right. And you want to be the top number 2 seed if it's a team like if you get Notre Dame. When they did that last reveal, UConn was 6th in the top 16, which means they would get the 3 seed, which would be South Carolina, or rather Southern California, which I think you would sign up for in a heartbeat if you're UConn.
Yep.
So the seed doesn't matter.
I mean, we're a totally different team now than we were versus USC.
Absolutely.
Now with that said, I do think USC is a totally different team. They're playing really, really good basketball right now.
Yep.
But I think that's a better matchup for us than seeing Notre Dame again, or having to see UCLA to get to the Final Four.
And I think even though UConn beat South Carolina by 29, you don't necessarily want to see them again because they'd have the revenge factor on their side. They weren't a whole team when they played UConn the last time. I think the best matchup for UConn would be Southern USC or even Notre Dame.
Because I'll tell you what, I wouldn't want to see. I wouldn't want to see Texas either.
Yeah.
Texas is physical. They have a lot of nice pieces. I like what they're doing. So I wouldn't love to see Texas to get to the Final Four.
Well, and we bloviate about the SEC and men's basketball. SEC and women's basketball is just as good.
Oh, 100%.
They have a lot of teams in the top 25, like the men do.
I think they have 7. Yeah, I think they have 7.
Jesus, wow.
Yeah.
Well, not only that, but you got to remember they're playing against even the 8 and 9 seed in the SEC. Those are good teams.
Good teams.
They would be 2, 3, 4 in the Big East at least 80% of the time, I would say, just based off of the style of play.
Tennessee's the prime example of that.
Yeah.
Right? Tennessee's playing right now on day 1 of the SEC tournament. If they were in the Big East,
they'd have a bye.
They'd have a first round bye. They'd have the double bye.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
They'd roll right through. The Big East has just dropped off completely in men's and women's. Do you think that it's all just because of the money? Because they're okay.
No, it's not the money.
It's not just
the
the money.
Commitment to basketball. It's these schools don't make a commitment. These schools give you a lot of lip service and don't give a full commitment to women's basketball. I'm sorry. You just don't. Because if they did, they wouldn't be this bad for this long.
Right.
Women's basketball has nothing to do with the money. It just doesn't.
And it's not the transfer portal either.
I guess I don't know.
Because I would say one player, maybe for one player per team, but the rest of it is really, I think, piecing together because I don't think that's being spent the same way. Maybe one player it is.
Right. Because I was looking, I think the same thing. It's one player because you don't see the transfers in the women's game at all. It's not like the men.
Well, no, there is transfers. You're not seeing the money flowing in the same capacity. I mean, other than a few of the stars and maybe the Cavender twins who are getting it for TikTok. That's about it.
Oh, well, that's on their own, right?
Yeah, the Kavanagh twins are really more. They leverage the school to do their stuff, but I mean they're good players, but they're not getting paid because they're good players per se.
Right. Joe, what do you think the men, they're going to go through the Big East tournament? Do you think they could go on a run and at least make it close to the finals and then they'll end up like an 8 seed?
Well, it could be a 2 or 3 seed in the Big East tournament. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
They could definitely, go on a run. All they have to do is win 2 games.
Right.
They were already assured of being a top 4 seed. If they end up second, yeah, they could get to the final game, but I don't think that's going to impact where they are as far as the NCAA seeding is concerned.
Where do you see them being seeded for the tournament?
8 or 9.
It is going to be 8 or 9, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's clearly 8 or 9.
And where do you see St. John's?
Well, some people have them as a 2. I don't see them that high. I see maybe a 3. I think they could be. I think they could be a 3 seed. But look, let's be honest, kids. Bracketology, preseason polls, mock drafts, 10-day forecasts. A waste of energy.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to look at, but people take it as a Bible, and it's not. It's all guesswork. You look at mock drafts. Somebody makes a trade, and your mock draft gets blown to smithereens. 10-day forecast. Somebody makes a mistake on the computer system, and they don't predict snow, and we get a foot of snow. 10-day forecast. It's all a waste. It's
right.
all entertaining, but it shouldn't be taken as seriously as people do. So I think UConn would be an 8 or a 9 in the NCAAs. If everything fell right, maybe a 7, which would be better because then you don't have to play a 1 seed.
The 1 seed in the second
weekend.
Right. Wow.
I think if St. John's wins the Big East tournament, they'll get a 2 seed.
Probably.
Yep. And I think if UConn wins the Big East tournament, they'll get a 7 seed.
Really? Even if they win the tournament, they'll slow up a 7.
Yeah.
Because look at the losses. You got to look at the teams. You got. They're a 9-loss team. There's no such thing as a 9-loss team being above a 7th seed. There's just not.
Right.
What do you think the record would be if they played in the SEC? I'm curious.
Oh my God, they'd be horrible.
You think they would struggle to make the tournament if they were in the SEC?
Well, I mean, that's a hard question, Shu.
I know. I'm projecting. I'm just curious. It just came to my head, like, because the SEC was so strong. I wonder if they would struggle in that conference.
Well, but I mean, the SEC is strong, but they're playing against one another.
Right.
They're beating up each other.
Right. They're playing one another. So, I mean, I know they're good, but how many SEC teams do we think are going to get to the Sweet 16?
Only a few, but I have a chance. But I think 9 are ranked.
That's what I was saying. Yeah, I think like 4 could.
9 are ranked or were ranked as of last week. I didn't look this week, but it's
and Auburn is just wow.
I never saw that. McNeely, by the way, thank goodness we have McNeely.
Oh, when he was out, it was painful to watch when he was out.
Well, and don't forget now, playing Marquette tonight. He didn't play the first game against Marquette,
right?
And that might have been a reason that they had the 25 turnovers in that game. Jalen Stewart has had 6 turnovers in that game. I don't think if things are as is, you're going to see much of Jalen Stewart tonight. I think tonight is a 7-player night without foul trouble.
Do you think they're gonna struggle against Marquette?
No, because I don't think they'll lose 3 games at Gamble in 1 year. I would find that hard to believe. Although Marquette didn't play great against UConn the first time around. All they did was press them and cause 25 turnovers and convert that into 29 points. But Marquette didn't shoot great, and they still only lost by 6. But that was at home. I just can't see UConn losing 3 times at Gamble in 1 year. I would find that hard to believe.
Maria, because you were talking about the women and the pressing. Did you press when you played?
No.
You guys didn't press at all, right?
Maria shot when she played. Maria didn't press.
No,
Listen,
I remember. I never
when
saw
I
it
played,
before.
we were not deep.
No.
Right.
Besides my
Nope.
freshman year, we were not deep at all. And we had a lot of injuries. We were a grinded out half court team, 100%. But I got to be honest, like back then, I'm trying to think, like Rutgers used to press. They had really quick athletic guards. There weren't a lot of teams that pressed a lot back then.
No, that's what I remember, Maria. Hardly anybody on the women's side pressed.
Yeah, it was very rare you saw a press.
Where do you think it came from this year?
Well, I think you got to look at the makeup of the team, right?
Yeah.
So I think that you have a lot of quickness. You have length, right, in your guards. And I think that besides that, I think that what UConn's realized is that, when a team slows down and can pick them apart in a half court and bang it inside a little bit, you run into trouble. So it's really all about a makeup of a team. And, I think that the best coaches can hide their weaknesses. It's not about exuding your strengths. Like the kids are going to play to their strengths no matter what. How do you hide the team's weaknesses? And I think because of our a little bit lacking in the post, you have to do some of that to alleviate being in the half court for 30 seconds with the team.
That makes sense. Because KK, like you said, I mean, she is a fire plug when she comes in. She is like the Energizer Bunny. She's just up and down, and they have that speed. So that makes sense. I was just curious because like they've never done it before. If one of the coaches came up with it, or if Gino just went with it, or CD, or
they've done it some other years, like some of those years when they were really deep, like with Renee Montgomery and all those guys. They pressed, they picked up full court. I think. We've definitely showed some pressure the last couple of years, more of like a zone pressure, but like these guys are just picking up man full and trapping all over the place. It's great. But if you got the dogs to do it, you may as well, right? Like, again, if it's going to take a team close to 10 seconds to get it over half court, now they got 20 seconds to run their offense. That's a little bit easier to manage versus being able to walk the ball up, pound it in the paint, get into the sets that they want to.
Yeah, it makes a big difference when you lose that timing. Okay, so wow, that's it. Yeah, so that they got Marquette and Seton Hall, and then the tournament starts. So they should be good to go. I mean, they'll at least come in on a roll. But I do agree with you. I 8 seed. Wow,
Maria, you got any D1 transfers coming in yet?
She's recruiting, man. She's
that's
been
what
hitting
I
the
want to
road.
know. I want to know if Maria's got, a couple of D1.
She's got a plan. She's got a plan.
I have a couple of D2s, but not a couple of D1s.
Okay. Awesome.
We'll see. I've been out on the recruiting trail the last 2 weeks. It's a painful process. There's a lot of bad basketball out there.
Is it really?
Oh yeah.
Is it mostly in state? You're just staying in state?
No, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut. Yeah.
And how do you find a transfer? Do they reach out to you?
Well, no. So the way that it works is that you can't actually talk to a kid until they're officially in the transfer portal. Now, a parent or a coach or an advisor can reach out to you on their behalf to kind of test the waters, but you can't legally talk to a kid until they officially hit the transfer portal.
Right. So is that like you've seen people? There's like a database with kids that go into the portal.
Oh yeah, there's right now there's like 700 kids in the portal. It's crazy.
There's 700 kids in the transfer portal?
Yeah, but don't forget Division I, Division II, and Division III, right? It's all one portal.
Joe, I wanted to ask you this, and because I asked Dave this too. If COVID didn't happen, do you think the transfer portal would exist?
No, you can't. I mean, who knows? I mean, COVID happened. So I have no idea.
I just hate it. That's why.
Well, but you're never going to go back now.
No.
You got no shot. You got no shot of going back.
No.
Because as soon as you try to go back, somebody files a lawsuit, and as we say all the time, the NCAA always loses its lawsuit. So, the idea that they would ever be able to go back, it's a way of life. And look, these coaches have adjusted to it. I mean, Nick Saban cried about the portal when he left. Saban used it. Nick Saban brought transfers in, right?
Yeah, he did.
So coaches adjust, and if you can't adjust, then you get out.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I agree.
You know what's so interesting is these associations, like the NCAA, are so financially weak.
Oh, they're pathetic.
They can't challenge anything. I mean, it's the same thing when you go state to state, like those associations that govern like sports. Every time they get sued, they back down. In New Jersey, we had a kid who was going to be the 4-time. He will now still, but he was going to be the 4-time state champion. And something happened in the stands in wrestling.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. And there was an all-out melee, and he was involved in it. And they tried to make an example of him, whether it was fair or not. They tried to make an example of him and suspended him. He only lost one wrestling match his whole career. He's about to be a 4-time state champion. I think one of only a few in history. And they sued, got an injunction. He wrestled in regionals. He won. He's going to win. I mean, he's the best wrestler in his weight class in the state. So he's going to win. He's going to Cornell. So what's interesting is that, these associations can't challenge at all any of these kind of rulings at all.
I didn't get that.
No,
Did you try again?
The conferences have all the power. That's the SEC wants, when they expand the playoffs to 14 teams in football, they want 4 guaranteed spots. They want 4, and the Big Ten want 4, and everyone else has to suffer. The conferences get all the money. They have all the power. The NCAA is impotent. You're muted. Don't you? The conferences drive everything. They get all the money. They get the $1 billion television deal, and everyone else has to suffer because of it.
I don't know why I'm muted.
You're not now. You're not muted now. You're not muted now. You were making fun of me for being.
But yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why they're not funded well. I don't know what the deal has to do with it, but they can't handle any lawsuits.
The only money the NCAA gets is from the tournament. That's it. Other than the tournament, they get very little. It's the conferences that get everything, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing with the SEC and the Big Ten. And I think eventually that they're gonna be one entity, and everyone else is gonna be on their own because they don't want to share money. They don't want to do anything like that. They just dominate, and it's going to be completely different. I don't think it'll be anything like it is now in the next 5 years. It's going to be completely different.
Because it's totally different than it was 5 years ago. So there's no reason to think that 5 years from now it won't be totally different again. I mean, it's just the evolving.
Yeah, I just would like to see parity. There's no parity anymore. It's all the money and it's all the conferences, and then everyone else suffers. I wish that it was, like it used to be. But like you said, it's
wait. How did it used to be? Which small school has won an NCAA basketball championship, men's or women's, in the past 15 years?
Well, George Mason went that one time.
Did they win?
No,
they lost.
And that's almost 20 years ago already.
Yeah, that's right. No, you're right. It doesn't make a difference. But I just don't like the transfer portal. I think it's just turned into free agency, and it's a free-for-all.
I think you have to have a transfer portal. I think, look, in today's era, there's no doubt that you have to have the way that it's structured may have to change, but you need to have a transfer portal. Like you can't, if coaches leave all the time,
They do.
all the time for a different school. So, it's not that the player wants to go necessarily with them, but it's that they should have the ability if their coach leaves. I always thought you should have that. I mean, if you think about it, this. You get recruited. Like Maria obviously had the same coach throughout her career. I did not. I was not Holtz's guy. I had to work my butt off to get back on the field when I moved over to linebacker. I was Tom Jackson's guy, God rest his soul. I was his guy. He had me playing right away as a redshirt freshman, right? So when Holtz came in, he hated me as a fullback.
But would you have transferred? Would you if there was a portal? Would you have left?
I would have left. Yeah,
really?
Wow. I would have left.
Wow.
There's no doubt. Holtz came in and said he had me go through. I had to sit out with an injury, but when he came back, he said, they just started to bury me on the depth chart. So I went to Holtz. And I said, listen, my goal is to just play. I just want to play. So send me over to defense so I have an opportunity to play. And then I ended up being able to start there. But it was a process. I mean, I would have obviously 100% left. I was starting as a redshirt freshman, a fullback. I would have transferred and started somewhere else. Actually, I ended up liking linebacker better. It saved my body. But as far as what would have happened, I think that's a bigger thing in recruiting that people realize. The person that recruits you is usually the champion for you. That's usually your.
They are 100%.
They're championing you because their job is tied to you being successful. You know what I'm saying? If you fail as a player and they brought you in, they're not going to be as successful as a coach.
You're 100% right. You're 100% right.
And that goes for every sport, by the way. I mean, basketball, a coach brings in a basketball player, and that player does not end up working his way into the starting position or ends up being buried on the bench. That coach is on the hot seat.
100%. So that's it. The women have the tournament, and then the men have the two games, and then they're going to go. Maria, do you think they'll roll through to win the tournament? No challenge at all. Yeah, I agree. Joe, you think that too?
What's that?
The women will just steamroll everyone in the tournament.
How did they do in the league this year?
They steamrolled everyone.
Yeah, okay. No more questions. You're a witness.
Okay. And and the men should be fine. You think they'll beat Marquette and Seton Hall? No problem.
Yep, I do.
Because they're not going to lose at Gamble.
I don't think so.
Okay.
One quick note on transfers. I'm going to give my example. Joe will appreciate this example. The person whose career got ruined by a coaching change was Zeke Rogers.
Yep. Yes. Shane told me that. Yes.
And Shane
told me that. Casey Cochran did too when Balto came in.
Yep.
Casey Cochran was that good?
Casey Cochran was really good.
Wow. Oh, okay.
And
he was that coach's son. Really
Jack
good.
Cochran's kid.
His father was
a great coach. He's a legend.
A lot of people like him, but he was a great coach.
Right.
Oh, I love
exactly, Shu. Unless you played for him, you didn't like him. And even if you played for him, your parents might not have liked him. But Casey was really good, and then the moron came in, and Casey never got a sniff.
Joe, what's the high school football rule in Connecticut? It's like a 40 or 50 point rule that you can't beat a team by.
I don't think that's in vogue. I'm not sure that's still a rule.
Okay, because I remember Jack Cochran purposely, because if you did it, you got suspended. And I remember he beat Simsbury by like 60, and he took the suspension because he hated the rule. So you don't think it still exists?
I don't think. I'm not sure, Steve, but I don't think it does.
Okay. Well, what a great episode! So great to have Mark on. We were so lucky and blessed. And thanks, Dave. I appreciate the look. You all can scream at me later. I'm just a people pleaser. I apologize. I'm sorry.
Can you throw some eggs? Throw some.
I'm not saying that anymore because you're going to cut me off anyway. You're going to cut me off.
If you're a people pleaser, I'm not. I'll wait till we go to the off-air show.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
Because you want to please people, but not the people you work with every week. I find that a little strange.
Yeah, you're 100%.
And I'm being dead. And I'm being dead. Serious.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. You want me to say it?
Are you going to end it or no?
Joe, thank you. Maria, thank you. Dave, fuck you. When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 orange.